I didn't realize, but I had not only a high ACE score, adverse childhood experiences, but I had a lot of abandonment challenges that I had dealt with in two ways. Number one, drinking was a problem for a while, and number two, achievement. Achievement was my coping mechanism. Aim higher, work harder, get smarter. Aim higher, work harder, get smarter. I mean, to a drastic extent. And so I know that a lot of people don't resonate with that, but a lot of the biggest achievers, those you said you have achievers listening, a lot of them are actually achieving to try to feel loved, when in reality, the more you achieve, the less loved you'll be, unfortunately.
Hey guys, before we get started, I have one quick favor to ask of you. Can you please hit the subscribe button so that more people can find the show? Thank you. It was almost 2 years to the day, almost, when I had Kevin on. And even since then, looking at the growth that you have with Next Level University, I mean, we're looking at 2,000 podcast episodes in over 175 countries, over 1 million listens, and six figures in revenue. What pivotal moment could you tie that to? That your growth and success over those years to help all of this come to fruition. What pivotal moment would you say that all of this began for you?
Yeah, and thank you so much. First of all, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. Kevin told me to tell you hello. He said Eugene is good people, and I was on recording 2059 right before this, and that's actually why I was late. So thank you for grace. I appreciate it.
2059 is crazy.
It's it's been a grind, but it's also been super, super, super meaningful. And I think that that's the key. So, what pivotal moment? The answer is twofold. The first side of that coin is there is no one pivotal moment. But the other side of that coin is there's certain moments that mattered more. And the moment that mattered most in hindsight was a car accident I got in at age 26. And I'll provide a little bit of context here. So, when I was 2 years old, my birth father passed away in a car when he was 28. That was very sudden. I had an older sister who was 6. I had a mom who was 31, stay-at-home mom. I had a stepfather from age 3 to 14. Stepfather left at 14. And we can go deeper into all that if you want to. But ultimately, I did the traditional path, particularly in the U.S. I know when I say traditional, I'm referring to I was born and raised in Massachusetts in the U.S. And the traditional path in the United States is preschool, kindergarten, middle school, high school, college, and corporate. And the US has the largest corporate economy on the planet, statistically speaking. And I'm not saying that because I'm in the US, I'm saying that because I'm big on statistics. So I did that path. And there's a quote by, I think it's Bezos, Jeff Bezos. Whether you like him or not, the quote's good. He said, some people have a job, some people have a career, and some people have a calling. I had a job at 14. I was a cart kid and a busboy at a golf course. I was a miserable human being. And that's the first bucket of life, I think, which is you're unsuccessful and unfulfilled. And you're young and you don't know anything. You don't know who you are. You don't understand the world yet. That kind of thing. Then I had a career. So after college, bachelor's in computer engineering, master's in business, I had a career in tech companies, Lens Americas, iRobots, Sensata Technologies, all these different companies. Eventually landed at a company called Cognex. I become a global 1% earner in my early 20s. And after my stepdad left, we were very broke, so I was used to being broke, so I didn't need much, so I just banked all my money, paid off all my debt, had a bunch of money in an investment account. Then I get in my car accident. So I'm 26 years old, and I get in a head-on collision, my fault, and that was the most pivotal moment. So that was 10 years ago. I'm 36 now, and I know I still look 15 for anyone who's on camera, which is why I have to dress nice. Otherwise, I'm not going to be taken seriously as a business coach, which is also why I have all my awards in the background. No one wants to be coached by a prepubescent 15-year-old, right? But in all seriousness, 10 years ago, that was the most pivotal moment because I went from externally successful and internally unfulfilled to flipping the script entirely and going all in on my own personal development, physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual development. And then I hoped success would be a byproduct, which eventually it was, even though I went broke for quite a few years there.
So in that pivotal moment, as you said, when you got in that collision, was it in that moment that you took the responsibility on yourself? That it was just like it flipped a switch? Because it wasn't that, let's say, you got in the collision and you were blaming everyone else or blaming other people for your circumstances. Was it in that moment you were like, okay, something has flipped here. I put myself in this place. I'm taking full accountability and responsibility for the situation I put myself in.
Yeah, so that's really good question. I've My girlfriend and I, future wife and I, we have a podcast called the Conscious Couples Podcast, and she studies shame a lot. She just got a trauma certification actually, and so I'm learning this from her. So I'm by no means expert on any of this, but we have a coaching client, a couple. Their name are Brandon and Hannah, and they wouldn't mind me sharing that. And we just talked about shame and shame responses. So there's 4 shame responses. Let me see if I can remember them. The first one is blame yourself. The second one is blame others, which is what you referred to in that question. The third one is withdraw, kind of just opt out. And the fourth one is get defensive. And these are also known as fight, flight, freeze, and fawn, the trauma responses. But essentially, some people have shame around not being good enough or not smart enough and that kind of thing. I didn't have that. That's not me. I think that's the majority statistically. I had shame around some of the traumas from my childhood because maybe not lovable is what I would refer that to. For me, I always felt like success came very natural, external success and achievement and competence. What never came naturally for me was relationships. It's Kev. Like everybody, we would go give the same speech. I know my connection's a little unstable. Are we good?
Yeah, we're good.
Okay. Did it power through?
It just went out a little bit, but we're good.
Okay. So when I started working with Kev, we realized we have 2 different shame responses and 2 different forms of shame. I think everyone has insecurities. You can call this insecurity, you can call it core wounding, you can call it shame, whatever you want to call it, but we all have something we're insecure about unconsciously deep down. His is not being good enough or smart enough. That's not mine. And so his fear is failure. Mine is being too much or too intense or not being lovable or likable. And so everybody loves Kev and I'm super competent or whatever. And you're not allowed to say that, but Kevin and I would trigger each other and we didn't understand why. We would fail externally and I'd be fine and he'd be needing to take a nap. And then we would get disliked or relationships would leave us or friends would hurt us and he'd be fine. And I'd be needing to take a nap. So what we came to realize is that everyone has a really hard time with one of 2 things. You're either really good at relationships or really good at competence, skills, capabilities, discipline, structure, systems. And so 2 guesses which one I am, right? So a lot of people, to answer your original question, when I got in that car accident, it freed me from my chameleon version of myself. There was a friend of college. My last name is Lazaros, and in college, L-A-Z, Laz. So they didn't call me Alan, they called me Laz. And he came up to me and he said, "You are, without a question, no one will tell you this, but you're the most popular kid on this campus." I remember thinking at the time that was really cool. I invited into every fraternity. There were 12 fraternities on campus. I was friends with the sports people. I was friends with the nerds. I was in clubs. I weightlifted, and I was also super smart, engineering, all this stuff. And I remember thinking that was really good. When I got in my car accident at 26, I realized that I've lost myself. I brought my high school friends to college and my college friends to corporate. They had a referral program at Cognex where I brought a bunch of people from college, and I got bonuses for that. And I just realized I'm spreading myself too thin and I'm trying to be a chameleon in every room because I have abandonment issues from my childhood. My dad died and my stepdad left. He took his entire extended family with him, and I still have never seen or spoken to a single one of them since. With her older boyfriend, that same year my mom and my aunt Sandy got in a fight and we got ostracized from her side of the family. To this day, I've only seen 2 of them. So I didn't realize, but I had not only a high ACE score, adverse childhood experiences, but I had a lot of abandonment challenges that I had dealt with in 2 ways. Number 1, drinking was a problem for a while, and number 2, achievement. Achievement was my coping mechanism. Aim higher, work harder, get smarter. Aim higher, work harder, get smarter. I mean, to a drastic extent. And so I know that a lot of people don't resonate with that, but a lot of the biggest achievers, those you said you have achievers listening, a lot of them are actually achieving to try to feel loved, when in reality, the more you achieve, the less loved you'll be, unfortunately.
Yeah, that really hits home, especially for me and for I know a lot of people listening as well. I'll take my example where I was, as you said, achieving to fill that gap.
Mm-hmm.
And one of my most notable examples where everyone that I was working with thought I was psychotic. They just said they're like, Eugene is absolutely psychotic for what he's doing. Where I was working like 60-hour week, full-time hours, while studying part-time in one university to do one degree without telling the another university while studying
Nice.
for a second degree. So I was studying for 2 degrees part-time while working full-time. And I was told when I signed up for the second degree that you can only apply for one college at a time, otherwise this course will be forfeit.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that I could just pull it off for the year, just doing both of these at the same time. And next thing, final exams came. The final exam was on the same day, at the same time, in two locations in the same city.
Oh no.
And I was like, oh,
Eugene,
and
that's
I
awesome.
was trying to work through it, and I was like, oh, it's all going to fall apart here, and I'm going to waste complete year, and it was that feeling that I was going to lose all that I had worked for,
Yeah.
and for one of them, it was like broken into 6 modules, so 6 exams to pass one course. The other one was one big final exam for the whole course.
Nice.
So I approached the lecturer that had the one big exam, and I said, look, this is the scenario I'm in. They weren't too happy, but they said, look, what I'll allow you to do is sit the deferral exam in 3 months' time.
Nice.
And that way you can pass. And for me, I should have learned from that to be like, okay, don't take on this much again. As soon as I passed both of them, got my degrees, and next thing,
What were
three
your
weeks
degrees in?
later, so the one was in quality management, and the other was in food science.
Very cool.
And the one thing I learned from when I studied quality management was that I never wanted to be a quality manager. Everyone was like, "Oh, you have the qualification. You should become a quality manager." And I'm like, "No." One thing I learned is I don't want to be a quality manager. I have more respect for my quality manager, and I know what to expect from my quality manager. So I said they were the 3 key learnings that saved me from applying for a position as a quality manager, which I knew I would have hated.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but 3 weeks after I'd finished both degrees and being like, okay, I finally have free time in the evenings, I was scrolling through, okay, what's the next degree I can study for? What can I devote the next 2 years of my life? What piece of paper can I get 2 years from now?
Whoa.
And it was only about 6 weeks after that that I hit rock bottom with burnout, where I hit complete rock bottom, where I
Yeah.
couldn't function, completely numb, didn't know where I was going, hyperventilating, my first panic attack.
Whoa. Whoa. So because that's the case, and thank you for sharing, your listeners are most likely achievers as well. And I know that you and I talked off air about that. And by the way, if my connection's on and off, I apologize. That's been happening. Zoom keeps saying, "Hey, your connection's unstable." So I got to do some router. I got to restart my router. But the question becomes, we both overswung. We overswung on the achiever side. But here's the thing, there's a lot of people who underswing. So how do we find 5? How do we stay centered? Because a lot of people they want success, but they're too lazy. They're not achievement oriented at all. They don't have goals. They don't have written goals. I actually just did a training last Thursday. It was called Why Only the Top 3% of People Have Clear Written Goals That They Actually Achieve. And if you research this, I use the ChatGPT deep research function. It's been pretty powerful. And that's basically what it says, is that based on all the research, the average of all of the research studies, 3% of people have clear written goals that are measurable that they actually achieve, which leaves 97% of people kind of carefree wandering. I think that we overly romanticize carefree wandering, except for in circles with achievers. I think it's good to be educated. I think it's good to have goals. I think it's good to be conscientious and disciplined, but you can overdo it, and most of us do. And so I did, you obviously did, right? I got straight A's through all of high school, blah, blah, blah. I've never really done something without trying to be the best I can be at it, as much as you're not really allowed to say that. And I do think that that's really good. And the more I've done coaching with people all over the world, there's some people that really want more of that. But there's some people who overdo it and burn out like you do. And I think we all have to find our own sort of, I don't know if balance is the right word, harmony. Harmony is a good word. We need to find our own harmony with some people live to work. That would be us in the past. Other people work to live, and maybe they tend to be a little lazier. Lazy is probably a bad word, but less driven. And I think all of us need to find a life that's somewhere at the center of those two. I think some people they rest to be more productive. Other people are more productive so that they can rest. And I think those two, I think the syntax matters a lot, depending on what you want out of life, depending on what fulfills you. And I think that's probably a good place to go.
And to find what fulfills you. How did you find what fulfilled you once you hit that moment, that pivotal moment for you?
Well, I think when I found, after my car accident, there was two things that really jumped off the page. I almost died in a car. My dad did die in a car when he was 28. I was 26, so I was contemplating my life. It was my quarter-life existential crisis. And I've always been kind of an existentialist in hindsight. You know what an existentialist is?
Yes.
Yeah, of course. Of course you do. Okay, otherwise you wouldn't like me. I'm kidding. I got in my car accident, and I'm just contemplating my existence. And I find a book called The Top 5 Regrets of the Dying. Have you ever heard of this book?
Yes.
Okay.
Bronnie Ware. Yes.
Beautiful. Awesome. Okay, so I still have flashcards from all those years ago, and they're all ripped and tattered now. But The Top 5 Regrets of the Dying, I wrote them down. I also interviewed Bronnie, by the way. That was fascinating. I was fanboying really hard on that interview. But The Top 5 Regrets of the Dying, if you're on video, you can see this sort of tattered flashcard I carried around in my pocket for years. And the number one regret of the dying is I wish I had lived a life true to myself and not what others expected of me. And that's the one that really hit home. The other one that really hit home is I wish I had the courage to express my true feelings. Because I just didn't. I think that people get mad. They're like, don't call yourself a coward. It's like, listen, I was such a fucking coward. I don't know if I'm supposed to swear. I'm sorry. Bleep that out if you can. I was so cowardly socially. I was very courageous when it came to applying to a school or applying to a job or keep applying, keep grinding, keep doing it. So behind the scenes when I was alone, I was very courageous. But when socially, forget it. I mean, I would just zip my mouth. I'll never forget this one instance. And there's someone that I'm with, I'll keep it anonymous, and he's like, well, you know, nowadays, Alan, the only way to make money is in real estate. And my brain said, that's got to be the dumbest shit I've ever heard. But my mouth didn't say anything. Have you ever heard of tech companies? The 21st century, all the top companies are tech companies, right? What do you mean the only way to make money is in real estate? Have you heard of the internet, right? So I do understand real estate is a lucrative investment for a lot of people, but if that was ever not true, it would be in the 21st century. But I didn't. I just zipped my mouth because I realized that being smarter than or being the know-it-all or being someone who actually cares about accurate thinking is not well accepted in social settings. A lot of people want to believe delusional things, and to me, I'm an engineer who wants the accurate data because you can't make good decisions without accurate data. And so anyways, the two things that changed my life was Bronnie Ware's book, because of I wish I had lived a life true to myself, not what others expected of me, which again comes down to social cowardice, and I wish I had the courage to express my true feelings, which again comes down to cowardice. The second thing that changed my life was Tony Robbins' TED Talk. Regardless of what people think of Tony, that TED Talk is magnificent. And even if you don't like Tony, listen to the TED Talk because he gets you to think about why you do what you do. And I think that really helped me understand, okay, it's the inner game I got to work on. I've already science, technology, engineering, mathematics, business, finance. Like I've got that. That's good, okay? And other people, that's not the case, so you got to work on that. But for me, it was the internal game that I needed to work on. And so 10 years ago, I went all in on the internal game. Shame, vulnerability, courage, humility, all these things that we weren't taught in school. And so I think everyone needs work on the inner game or the outer game. I know some people that are wildly well-rounded, emotionally mature, amazing human beings, but they suck in the economy. And I know some people that are multimillionaires, world class in the economy, skill sets, hard skills up the wazoo, who are just emotional children who, you know, play video games while their wife cooks for them. And I'm not trying to be mean, but they take better care of their Porsche than their own family, right? So we need to be righty and lefty, and I think almost no one is ambidextrous.
Yeah, you touched on a few key points there, and one that resonated with me a lot was where, let's say, I my mouth got me in a lot of trouble when I was in university. If someone spoke up and it was, as you said, dumbest thing you could say, I would call them out on it. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
like, you can't go around saying that. I was like, that is pure BS, and that would get me in a lot of trouble.
Yeah.
But it also showed that I'd stand up for what I believe in.
Mm-hmm.
And as soon as I got my first full time job, I was told three things. It was like, keep your head down, like, don't speak up, do the work, and get paid. Don't question it. So I just live by those three things. Being a student, straight out of university, getting my first pay slip, I was like, okay, I'm not going to question any of this. Almost did that for 10 years. And
Ooh.
when something flipped in me, when I was recovering from my burnout, and I started doing my own self development and really delving into my emotional intelligence, and really just like, it was an area of my life that I had neglected for so long, because similar to you, I was chasing achievement to fill that gap where I did not. I ran away from responsibilities and my emotions and everything, because I was good at achieving things.
Mm-hmm.
I had a strength and the competency for achievement. But dealing with emotions, I was like, no, I can put them in the box and deal with them in my 30s. Here I am
How'd
now.
that go? Pretty good. Same, by
Uh,
the way.
so when I finally realized what was wrong, and the resistance, the like, I was trying to advocate for mental well-being in the workplace, and I was getting so much resistance in the place I was working,
Mm-hmm.
and I said, like, enough is enough, and I started speaking up and calling it out, and I was Eugene the compliant guy, Eugene, the quiet guy who does the work in the shadows, to, oh, Eugene, the outspoken guy who's causing trouble, who's challenging us on the way we do things around here.
Yeah.
And as soon as I started speaking up for myself, I felt better. I was no longer bottling up. There was no resentment anymore. I was
Yeah.
like, look, I'm not resenting them for having different values than me. I'm speaking my values, and now it's my choice whether I decide to stay here or not,
Yeah.
whether
Nice.
I decide to compromise on my values.
Yep.
And that was one of the biggest leaps in my growth that I took, was coming to that realization. So I think, similar to what you said about, um, let's say, being a chameleon and not speaking up in those times to to blend in. But it's when we really speak true to our values, and not just speaking up for the sake of speaking up, to be the loudest person in the room, but speaking up from a place of truly aligned with yourself, and from a place of authenticity, that that self-awareness, that hyper-awareness of yourself, and being able to speak true to that is what resonates with people.
What I've come to understand over the years is that when you live from the frame of it's bigger than me and the goal becomes growth, people respect that you speak up more. Instead of I'm right and you're wrong and it's ego and status, it's let's contemplate together. Like what I could have said. So when that person said, well, nowadays, Alan, the only way to make money is real estate, I could have reacted with status and ego. Well, I could have done number one, which is what I did, just shut my mouth, which then holds resentment. And I always say the suppression of self-expression leads to eventual depression. And so you don't love yourself when you're a coward. I wanted to speak up from an authentic place, but I was too cowardly to do it because I wanted his approval. And the second one is I have to teach him something, and I need him to know that tech is the future. And look at really, that's the dumbest thing I've ever. That's ego and status. That's trying to be right. And now what I would do is I would do what I call a shield bump. So ego and status is you bash their shield and they go flying because you're stronger. And the cowering is kind of like being a turtle and just moving your shield back. And eventually you have to bash their shield because you're in a defensive position and you get smaller and smaller and smaller. So one is the puffer fish. I'm right, you're wrong. One of them is the turtle and you shell up and never speak up. And there's something in the center, which is a shield bump, which is, honestly, brother, from my perspective, I'm a computer engineer and I've been studying tech my entire adult life. I built my first computer at 12. And in my honest opinion, I think the tech space is actually far more lucrative than real estate. And I do think the future is mostly digital if you look at the trends. So real estate's a great investment, but I actually don't think it's the best one. That would be centered. But it also wouldn't be cowering. It's not ego and status, but it's also not, oh, yeah. I mean, tech is important too. See how one of them is shirking because you're too much of a fucking coward, pardon my French, and the other one is ego and status and trying to be over the top. And so one of them's the victim and the other one's the villain. And I think that if you want to be someone who's mature with both IQ and EQ, you have to stay centered. And it's not easy. I mean, honestly, there's a part of you that does want to say, that's the dumbest shit I've ever heard. And there's another part of you that wants to shut up and not say anything. But that's not how progress happens. Progress happens when we have an honest dialogue, even if it is challenging. And it shouldn't be my view versus your view. The whole can be greater than the sum of its parts. If you have two emotionally mature individuals having a discussion where I can illuminate something for you and you can illuminate something for me. And I always say this, it's like this coffee mug that I'm showing on camera. If I hide the handle, you can't see that there's a handle, but I can. So if I say, hey, by the way, there's a handle over here, you and I can see the 360 degrees around the whole mug. And to me, the only thing better than the truth is the whole truth. And none of us have the whole truth. Everyone thinks they're right. That's why everyone's wrong. Listen, it's a spectrum. It's not a 1 or a 0. It's not real estate is nothing and tech is everything. That's the dumbest shit I've ever heard too. It's real estate's important, but also don't you understand the trends? So I want to increase two things, distinctions and deeper understanding about myself, others, and the world. And to me, I'm 36 years old, so I'm still young, but it compounds. You can't make good decisions when you don't have accurate data about yourself, others, and the world. If you know yourself, how you work and why you work that way. If you know others, how people work and how they work that way, why they work that way. And then you understand the world, the economy, how it works, why it works that way, government, business to business, business to consumer, how it all works, charity, business, for-profit, non-profit. If you understand how it all works, now you can make effective choices. You can't make good choices when you don't know what the pieces do in the chess analogy. If you're a chess player who doesn't know what the king does and doesn't know what the queen does and doesn't know what the pawn does, you're going to end up a pawn in someone else's fucking game. And to me, that is the ultimate travesty. That's why Hitler burnt books. That's why people like to keep people dumb, because dumb people are easier to control. And I'm not for that. I want to educate myself and others so that you can make empowering choices. I'm not going to tell you what to do. I say this to my clients. I'm never going to tell you what to do. I'm going to tell you my perspective on what I believe would be optimal. And then you're going to run it through your filter of your core values and your goals and make sure that you are a student, but not a follower. And be coachable, be humble, have work ethic. But at the end of the day, you got to make sure everything you do is the result of your own conclusion.
Yes, I think the analogy that I like to use is that I'm not taking the steering wheel. They're still in the driving seat. I'm not taking the driving wheel. I'm not a backseat driver shouting what direction they need to go in. I'm sitting in the passenger seat, so I have the same view out of the windshield as they do. And I can guide them along. I can say, oh, there's a turn up ahead. Oh, there's a hard shoulder up ahead. Oh, avoid that obstacle if you can.
Nice.
And if they crash into something, that's another thing. It's like, okay, but at least you're there for support. It's a supporting role. I'm not there to take the steering wheel for them, and it's their decision which way, what way they want to take that information.
It's a good metaphor. The only thing I would add is you are going to notice things they're not, because you have a different mental map.
Yes,
we all have a mental map of ourselves and the world, right? And that's why relationships are so powerful. because you can teach me something and I can teach you something and we can both leave smarter. But if our egos get in the way, we both leave worse, not better.
From what you've learned, this, all your self-development and emotional intelligence, what helped you the most when growing your business, when growing Next Level University?
Leadership. Leadership is the most atrociously difficult thing in the entire world, especially to do it well. A lot of leaders are dictators, and they are manipulative. How do you, I took a leadership course in college, and the homework assignment was to watch Gladiator, the first one, 2000, I think it came out in 2000 with Russell Crowe. And Joaquin Phoenix and Russell Crowe's characters in that film, it was from a leadership lens. Joaquin Phoenix was a terrible leader, entitled, the son of the emperor, didn't earn it. The other person, Russell Crowe's character, didn't even want to be emperor, even though that's the emperor said, that's why it has to be you, because you don't want it, so you won't let the power get to your head. And one of the things that I just got the chills, I don't know if it's because it's cold in here or because that was powerful, but I told Kev early on, like, I wanted you to be the guy. I wasn't CEO at the beginning. I was so much of a social coward that I didn't want the arrows thrown at me. I always say rocks get thrown up, compliments get thrown down. And so if I was the tallest tree, I knew that I would have the rocks thrown at me. And I was too much of a coward to take that responsibility. But then we came to realize over time that I have to be if the company is going to achieve what it's supposed to achieve, because I'm good at metrics and habits and skills, and I reverse engineer everything. I have an engineering brain. And by the way, behind the success of most successful companies, there is an engineering mind. There is. Usually that's not the front runner, because usually engineers can't talk. And trust me, I used to think I was a good communicator, and I realized I'm a strong communicator to other engineers. And there's 4 modalities of thinking. One of them is mathematics, and it's the rarest by far. So if you think in mathematics, you are officially struggling with relationships almost automatically, because no one else talks your language. And that's a whole other conversation we can get into if you want. But ultimately, leadership is the hardest thing. And that's the thing that has been the most humbling and the most challenging, but the most important. And that makes sense, because I have an 18-person team, but at one point it was 24. We had 24 departments, 24-person team. We had a charity. Kevin and I, in the beginning, so there's 2 ways a business fails. There's a million ways, but 2 main ones. One is it grows too slow. The other one's it grows too fast. In the beginning, we grew too slow, so we were struggling, couldn't pay our bills. And then we hit a growth spurt, and COVID happened, and everything went online, and everyone and their mother started a podcast and all this stuff. And the podcast globally went from 2 million to 5 million. And we have a production company, so we work with 106 podcasters and business owners on the internet. We have an entirely virtual company. So we went from slow growth to an average for 4 years straight. An average, it was 150, 160, I think it was 90%, and then it was like 150% again or something like that. But the average is 119% year over year for 4 years straight. So what happens when you're growing 119% year over year? Just imagine when a credit card comes to you and offers you money, and it's only 29% interest rate, and you're growing at 119% year over year. It's like, do it. That's still 90% in the green, baby. Roll it, buy it. Kevin gets a Beamer. He goes to Scotland. I buy a home. We're doing it, right? And we're just off to the races. Hire everybody. The fish are jumping in the boat. Try to capture it. You just lose your mind. You get cocky. You don't mean to. We got cocky. And you get away from the fundamentals of your business. We started an app. We invested thousands of dollars into an app. We just got spread too thin. Dumb. Then 18%. Then 11%. Uh-oh, we're overextended. Too much payroll, too many team members, too many credit cards. Uh-oh. So what happens when you go 119% year over year growth in revenue to 18% and then 11% when you just bought a bunch of things, right? You leveled up big time your expenses, but now all of a sudden the fish are jumping out of the boat. Now you're in some serious trouble. So then Kevin and I sat down. We said, okay. And I pulled Kevin in like, dude, we're going to die. We're going to go out of business. We're not going to die. We're going to go out of business. I said, you and I need to have a conversation. We have 24 departments and a charity. what are the departments that we would go out of business without? We came up with 8. Meaning we could run our business and eliminate 2/3 of it. We got rid of the wrong people. We got rid of the wrong departments, and that was wildly hard. And when I talk about leadership, I mean, when you get rid of the wrong people, that's way more painful than anything else for me, based on what I talked about at top about the core wounds, right? Because I considered my team like, and I made this mistake. Every young entrepreneur makes this mistake. Do not do this. Do not do this. You have friends and family, and you have team members. Team members for primary focus, secondary focus. Friends and family, the primary focus is quality time, enjoying and facilitating great experiences. When you have team members, the primary focus is achievement. I used to treat my team as my friends. They are my friends, but not first. They're team first, friend second. My friends are friends first, achievement second. And when you get that wrong, you are just going to ruin the company on accident, because people need to know that there's a standard here. So leadership is my answer. It is atrociously difficult. We now have 15 departments again because we've expanded again, and I'm trying to stay very humble with it. I told you about NLU, PGU, BGU, the sort of triad, Next Level University, Podcast Growth University, Business Growth University, Level Up Yourself, Level Up Your Podcast, Level Up Your Business. So we have 3 main podcasts that are the triad of our entire business, which is the entire business is Next Level University. nextleveluniverse.com, which is all things next level. But ultimately, leadership is by far the hardest thing, I think, and it's also the most valuable, particularly in the 21st century when we work with people all over the world. Right? I have a new VA. Her name's Kenna. She's in the Philippines. I've never met her. So you better have structures, and you better have SOPs, and you better have metrics and habits. All my team members, all my clients, we all track metrics and habits. We all have goals, priorities, all this stuff. So we all have train tracks that we implement and improve upon to make sure we're all rowing in the same direction.
Yeah, what you covered about leadership there is the one thing I really try to drill into people, especially young people getting into leadership or getting in over their heads, and trying to make everyone a friend in their
Worst
team.
idea ever.
It's like, oh, my team are like my family, and it's like, okay, I'm just waving the red flag over here.
Yeah.
I was like, no, you're going to regret that. It's the same with leaders. Then when they say to their team, they're like, oh, I think of you as my family, I think of you as my friends, and here I am like, I don't want you to think of me as a friend. I want you to be my leader. I want you to show up as a leader. I don't want you to show up as a friend.
100%.
And that's and it's in understanding that and aligning
3 years ago, man.
within the team.
I needed that conversation 3 years ago, man. I'm telling you. I was saying exactly that. You're my chosen family. Dumb. Worst idea ever. I am your coach and I'm the CEO of the company. And there's something, you have to be that first, friend second. Have to.
Yeah, you can always head out for a beer after work, but once the work is done, when the work gets done, and then we can go out for a beer. But before that, it's like helping your team to level up. It's more difficult to reach out to one of your friends and say, "Hey, I want to help you level up in my team." Well, your friend's probably not going to take you seriously because at the end of the day, you're like, "Oh, you're still going to be my friend regardless if I achieve that or not."
Yep.
Whereas if your leader tells you, or if your boss or whoever is hiring you tells you you need to get this done by the end of the day, then 9 times out of 10 you'll probably get it done, unless you're able to negotiate why it's unreasonable.
Yep. Yeah, I think it's a spectrum. I've researched transformational leadership quite a bit. There's a bunch of different leadership styles. There's also a bunch of different books on it, all kinds of stuff. But ultimately, transformational leader is someone who, it's very difficult to identify where someone is, identify where you are, go to where they are and communicate there, empathize with where they are, but also hold them to a higher standard and try to help them get to the next level. All at once, all at the same time. You have to be empathetic and understanding and supportive, and you have to be hardcore and intense and lead by example. It is atrociously difficult. It's so bad. Now, it's also you can't build anything, and this is something that landed for me in my 35 last year. This changed my life forever. It took me 35 fucking years to figure this out, and I really hope I can swear on this podcast because I've been doing it. I'm sorry.
I'm just going to stick a
Otherwise,
big E. It's all good. I'm sticking this to big E on this episode. It's all
Okay,
good.
I'm so sorry. Or you're going to have to do some editing. I apologize. I need to emphasize some things, right? So, 35 years old, and I realize I heard this quote, and I get why it exists, but every quote, there's another side to the coin that no one's telling you. Beneath the iceberg is different than you think. The quote of no one achieves anything great on their own. Fair. Here's what it's missing. One person can make a great team by setting the standard and setting the pace. Kevin has told me behind the scenes, and he wouldn't mind me sharing this. He said, dude, I'm a good number 2, but I can't set the pace. You have to do that. Kevin is the people person. And we realized this recently. People work with Kev because they love Kev. He's just a likable dude, but they need to know that I'm a part of it. So he goes first with people, and they love him and they like him, but they also know that my standard is going to be held. So I said, Kev, you get a sale away from me. It's called triangulation. You go work with the customer, the client. They like you and they want to work with someone they like. But they also need to know that someone is making sure everything is dialed in. So people don't, and here's the problem. We did this thing called an intimidation factor. I did research about the top 30 factors that make someone very intimidating, because I needed to figure out why no one likes me. And it took me a long time because I've never been an easily likable person. I realize when I'm likable, I don't like myself. When I like myself, no one likes me. It's not me. It has nothing to do with me. It has to do with these intimidation factors. And these might as well be leadership qualities, by the way. So I have them. I rated myself. So I sent it to Emilia, my beautiful girlfriend, future wife. I sent it to Kev. I said, I need a rating from 0 to 10 on each of these qualities. Eye contact, high self-standards, there's all 30 things that make you an intimidating human. Being tall isn't in there. Being attractive isn't in there, right? All these things. I'm 6'2", all this stuff. Okay. Kevin gave me a 9.5. He gave me all 10s, a couple 9s, 2 or 3 8s. And I said, dude, we have a problem. Everyone you gave me an 8 on, I'm trying to dial those up. I'm like actively working on those skills. He's like, I know. Okay. Kev is not as intimidating as I am. He never has been. He never will be. That's okay. We both give the same speech. Everyone loves Kev, hates me. What the hell is going on, right? I'm sitting there going, my speech was better than his. Doesn't matter. Nobody cares. Business to business, in my early 20s, I sold industrial automation equipment into manufacturing facilities all across New England, Vermont, Connecticut, Western Massachusetts. That was my territory. I was selling to the CEO of big, huge Fortune 500 companies, okay? I was selling to engineers, automation engineers, continuous improvement managers, all this stuff. They think in numbers. They like me. They're like me, more like me. I was good at business-to-business sales. So we get into the personal development space, and Kevin and I are like, well, I have the sales background. I'll be the sales guy. Worst idea ever. I am so intimidating to consumers, it's not even funny. And I said this to Kev. I said, listen, I understand why the world loves Amazon, but they hate Bezos. That's just a thing, right? I said, I don't need people to like me, but I do need people to not hate NLU. So you have to sail away from me a bit, and we have to do this triangulation. You can be the buffer between me and them. They need to know that I'm at the helm unconsciously, which gives them the certainty that the products and clients and services are going to be on point. But they need to know that you're the guy, because no one wants to talk to me, and that's okay. I don't want to say no one, but very few people. Except for achievers and super achievers. So it depends, business to business. Okay, some of our bigger clients with me, him, less intimidating, all good. The point that I'm making with all this, leadership is dependent on who you naturally are. I am a naturally intense. I'm dialing down my tenacity by a significant margin right now. I don't know if you can sense it, but this is me dialed down. I have so much more tenacity. It's not even funny. I am like constantly trying to stay centered in this. The passion, the fire, it's ridiculous. But I will overly, if I was a coach of a 7-year-old team, I would be way too much. It would be bad. It would appear toxic, actually. But if I was a coach in the NFL, I could actually say, listen, get it together. What are we doing here, right? Like, you guys are professionals. So what I realized is that I have to be catered to a specific level in the business model. And so leadership is dependent on where you are. Kevin has to dial up sometimes in order to be seen as and respected, but he's naturally likable. I'm naturally respectable, but I have to dial down sometimes, still authentically, in order to be liked and warm and loving. And I always say this, sales, you can't say, hey, my name's Alan, do you want to get married? I can be more intense on this because we're talking to achievers. But I can't be this way on social media and expect to have a lot of followers. And ultimately what you have to do is find your authentic voice and your authentic self and then dial and amplify that up or down based on who you are versus change who you are. I'm not trying to change who I am. I'm still an engineer. I'm still an achiever. I'm still Alan Lazaros. I'm still intense and I know it, and that's okay. That's who I am. However, I can communicate effectively based on the relationship that I have with this person and based on, you don't teach AP calculus to a 7-year-old unless they're a prodigy. It's that same metaphor. And that's why leadership is so difficult, because you have to be the same person in every room, but also dial up or down your tenacity based on the standards the other person can handle.
Even with that tenacity that you have, I feel that's the reason why you have such follow through with Next Level University. I mean, especially with the podcast, because I've been dealing more with Kevin over the past 2 years, and he's always on about how you're recording episodes back to back, or batching your episodes in 1 or 2 days for the week, having weekly episodes, sometimes more than one episode a day, because you also have the podcast growth episodes. And seeing all of that takes more than just discipline. It takes more than just being motivated every day, or having the discipline, having the routine. It requires follow through, because you have good days and you have bad days.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And I think that's one of the things that's really hard for me. I'll give this last piece, and if I'm a little shaky, it's because I have to go to the bathroom really bad. I also know we got to jump in 3 minutes. This will be the last piece, and thank you so much, Eugene. This has been awesome. Seriously. So Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, when I was younger, was a hero of mine. And he's kind of not anymore, and it's nothing against him. I don't want to overly do any, like, I think he's a good role model in many ways. I also think there's certain things that, in my opinion, he's sold out on a bit. And again, it's just my perspective. It is what it is. But one thing that really I do think is of value here is he gave a speech to the LA Lakers. It's on YouTube. That is more of who he really is. It's a more honest version of himself. Because The Rock, when it comes to business to consumer, he's warm, he raps, he's fun, he's funny, he's playful, he's fishing. Like, that's what people like about The Rock. They like that he's funny and fun and warm and loving. And there's something called a strength-warmth duality. Leaders need to be warm enough to be welcoming and inviting, but strong enough to be respected. When he's talking to the Lakers, when I first found this speech, I saved it to my phone because I figured he would take it down when he found it. Because it's not the warm, loving Rock people think. And you owe it to yourself to listen to this speech if you're a super achiever and you want to know who that dude really is. The Rock doesn't mess around, man. There's a level of tenacity and work ethic there that doesn't come from rainbows and butterflies. And Kevin's a very centered, warm, loving man. I can be warm and loving, but that's not my baseline. My baseline is tenacity, persistence, insane, obsessive work ethic. And that's why Kev has the humility to let me lead, because he knows that the reason we've never missed an episode is because his work ethic and humility is high, but my commitment level is, we will never miss. And I used to be too much of a coward to share this, but my beautiful girlfriend and I, she's also very tenacious, the most tenacious person I've ever met. Her and I just surpassed today, this morning, 1,160 workouts in a row. And I used to be too cowardly to share that because I would basically, a lot of people struggle to exercise 3 days in a row. So here I am over 3 years. It's like, good for you, bro, right? I was just too afraid to be disliked. But the truth is, there are some really tenacious people out there that really are committed at a really high level. And I'm committed to never missing exercise, and I'm committed to never missing an episode. And I do think that that's what it takes to achieve a lot of things, particularly for me, last piece. When my stepdad left, we went from really well off in the 90s. We literally had a yacht to he took all the income. And I went from I hope I get into college to I can't even go because it's $50,000 a year and I now get free lunch at school because our income is so low. My mom trades in her BMW for a little Honda Civic. How are we going to keep the house? No dad, no generational wealth, no trust fund. Like, I'm in serious trouble here. And I just, it created so much tenacity because it was up to me. I didn't have any safety net. And again, I was born in a great country, so I had some safety net, obviously. But at the end of the day, I do think that pain and adversity can create drive. And I think a lot of people are not very driven. And then I think they spend their life envying people who are, when in reality, what created that drive isn't something you want. And it's not necessarily a natural way for you anyway. So not everyone's going to be as successful as The Rock, nor should they be. That dude hasn't taken a day off in, 30 years. And I haven't taken a day off in 10 years. And I say that because I care enough to make sure that people aren't trying to compare to something that isn't actually for them.
I think in your tenacity as well is that you're very to the point, and that's what we need to see in our leadership also. So I really do. I see Next Level University going leaps and bounds from where you are already.
Thank
and you
you,
have
Eugene.
that self-awareness.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it, and it's taking a lot of courage, and it's very vulnerable for me to be that honest. But I do need to, because I think it's what people. I think it will help people a lot. I think it'll inspire and motivate. And I think it'll educate, and I think some people will hate it, and some people will find a lot of value in it. And I'm going to try really hard to focus on the people who really need to hear what I needed to hear, which was, hey, it's not going to be easy, and anyone who thinks it is in some serious trouble, despite what you see on Instagram.
Yes, don't even look at Instagram anymore. But
Yeah.
it's in this sharing of vulnerability that where we find strength. So I really appreciate it. It's something that when I first burned out, trying to find men speaking about burnout, there was no podcast about it. So I just said, oh, well, whatever I'm experiencing doesn't exist because no men are speaking about this on Spotify. But I realized it was just men don't speak about these things.
Yes.
So that's what I appreciate is men being able to come on and share those vulnerabilities, because that's how we get stronger.
Yeah, agreed, brother. Thank you so much, Eugene, for having me. This was a pleasure. And Kevin was absolutely right, man. Anytime you want to do it again, reach out. You want to anything, like, just let's stay connected, my friend.